I'm very pleased to be talking to Tim Reid. Now that's a name that most of you will have seen, but probably not noticed, because Tim is one of the scriptwriters for Peter Kay's Car Share, which I think has been commissioned for another series. And he is not just a scriptwriter, he's also a comedian, stand-up comedian, but he started life as an innovation and creativity consultant. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Nigel. Hi.
How did you make the transition from each of those is a career in itself?
That's a great question. Actually, it's something that I've done throughout my career, actually. I've always transitioned, I think. I've always looked to the next thing to some degree. I started my career in advertising, but quite unusually for an ad man. I started in media, so I was planning and buying where the ads went. I moved into becoming an account director, so running the client's projects. I became a planner because I wanted to get closer to the strategy and what was it all about and what was the idea. And then I wanted to get even closer to the idea, so I became a copywriter. So I joined the creative department and wrote ads and came up with the ideas for the campaigns. And then once I was doing that, I started to realise that it was ideas that was what really kind of wound my watch. So I moved into innovation. So I worked for about 7 or 8 years for What If, the big innovation consultancy.
I know What If very well.
Yeah, and
yes.
I loved it.
Marylebone High Street.
Exactly right. Yeah. Some really funky offices.
Very funky offices.
Yeah, and so I loved doing that, and I loved helping big teams, big organisations come up with ideas. So sometimes training them how to do it, and often facilitating the projects. But all through that time, I guess I had a love of comedy and comedy writing. And so I was writing sketches and sending them off to things like the Kevin Bishop Show, but always wanted to write a bigger comedy. And then a colleague of mine at the time at What If and I came up with the idea of Car Share. We wrote it. We wrote the first series, and then my colleague shared it with Peter Kay, who he'd gone to school with, and it was made from there.
Right. So it was a personal link.
Yeah.
Right.
It's often as these things are.
As these things are.
Yeah, but
true.
actually we were never after Peter being in it to start with. We just wanted his view on what we'd written. So he could tell us where we'd gone wrong, or if he thought it was any good, maybe set us up with a meeting with, with someone, with a commissioner or a broadcaster. But as it was, no, he loved the idea, and the rest is kind of recent history, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're still doing work with companies on innovation and creativity. You haven't abandoned that part of your career.
No, not at all. Because I love it, actually. I love talking to people about how to come up with ideas, helping them do it. So whether it's in talks or in workshops and training people in how to run better brainstorms, I guess, how to have bigger, better ideas. So I do love doing that, and actually I see the two as very, very much linked. Actually, I think there's a huge link between comedy and creativity. In fact, the more I do it, the more I see that the two things are very closely aligned.
So what do? Tell me. You walk into blah blah company who've asked for someone to help them with innovation and generation of ideas.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, so first of all, if it's about training them to help them to do it, which is often the first thing, help to facilitate and empower people to be able to have better ideas. A lot of it is in explaining where ideas come from, and why I believe there's such a link between comedy and creativity. Because getting the energy in the room right often means bringing laughter into those sessions.
It's very true.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that I do before I get to show them the tools, the techniques.
Tell a few jokes.
No, well, kind of. I think it's partly that. It's not jokes as much, but getting just some laughter in the room.
Yes.
And actually, because I've understood where laughter comes from. So it comes from, I think there's two main things we laugh at: truth and surprise. So and that's also the ingredients of any great idea. Truth and insight, a recognition of what's going on in the world, and surprise. So twisting that insight and coming up with ideas that no one's ever heard of before. That's kind of surprise, makes us laugh. So really, as soon as I start to get to talk about creativity, bring some of that in, and you do get the laughter in the room. And I do it intentionally because I think as soon as you've got a group laughing, they're relaxing. We laughed as cavemen to show that we trusted each other. So laughter is a form of saying, I trust you, I feel safe, we're in this together. So getting some laughter into a workshop is not just a way of kind of making it fun. It's a way of getting our brains in the right place to start to be able to think about ideas.
It's also about emotion, isn't it? And we've got some crazy notion that innovation is some sort of intellectual process, and that emotion doesn't really come into it. But you're saying exactly the opposite. It's essentially feeling right, being in the right frame of mind. And the ideas come.
Absolutely. You've got to get the behaviours right,
yes.
I guess. Get everyone in the right mindset. So that is an attitude, it's a set of behaviours, and you need to get that right before you start to introduce the process. Because it is a process too. You know, it is the process of coming up with ideas, and there is, there are ways of making sure that you get to the right ideas, rather than just getting the behaviours right and then hoping for aha moments. You get the behaviours right, and then you introduce a range of tools and techniques, and get people to practice it, get people to have ideas so they can see it works. But not forgetting the laughter. I often tell people, if you're in an ideas session and you're still in that kind of beard scratchy, head scratchy, who's got a great idea, what have you got, you're not in the right mindset yet. But I say, if someone says something that suddenly makes everyone else laugh, I would try to train it into people that you have to see that as a bit of a red flag. If you start laughing in a workshop or an idea session or a brainstorm, it normally means someone said something that has a truth at the heart of it, but it was a bit surprising, a little bit absurd even maybe. And that often means there's a great idea in there because you've just been surprised about something, but you've laughed because it feels there's a truth in there, there's an insight. So it's about getting the behaviours right for sure, and the attitude, and I think that's so important to signal out, because it can be counterintuitive at work, especially if we've got a big serious problem, we've gathered expensive people together for an hour, and if someone says, right, the first thing we're going to do is have a laugh, it can feel a little bit counterintuitive, but we've got to crack this. So I really emphasise that it's means to an end. We're doing that to get to the right point in the end.
Setting the context, isn't it? Before you get into process, rather than rushing into process. And that kind of applies to anything, really. If you don't get the context right, the most brilliant process is a waste of time.
Absolutely.
So how do you deal with toxic organisation? You go in and you realise there's massive tension in the room. They all hate the CEO, or the CEO hates all of the people in the room. What do you do to shift the focus so that people are able to begin to think and the ideas can come?
So I think there's a few things with that. I think the first thing is make sure that you antidote a lot of that from the start. So that could be about making sure that you've got the right people in the room.
Yes.
And if there is, a toxic element within the culture of the organisation, it could be that you're best off working without that present. If it has to be because that person, or team is a key stakeholder or sponsor of the problem, then you antidote it in other ways. Again, by getting the energy right, by getting some laughter in the room, by doing certain exercises that start to get people into the right place. It can also be about giving different people different tasks within that. So you could be, if you have people who really struggle to be expansive and playful in their thinking and coming up with the ideas, then maybe you give those people the task of floating round and helping other teams make their big ideas realistic. So identify what the barriers might be, but in a way where you say, and here's what you might be able to do about it, so that you're using their natural skill and inclination, if you like, in a positive way.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So basically, make the black hats useful, the ones who just want to say how bad that is, bring them in at a point where they feel they've contributed, they feel they've anchored the whole thing down and made a big contribution. We actually could talk for hours about how you manage groups, how you use your emotional intelligence to understand what's really going on as opposed to what appears to be going on. But we won't have time for that. But I think you're right. It's about getting it right in the room. And when you've got it right in the room, help others to get it right through the organisation.
Yeah,
and once you've done those two things, you've built the foundations for a more creative, intelligent, innovative world, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
You change the way people see their role and the way the company operates.
Exactly. And I think some of that is long term. It's culture change. That can't be solved in a workshop.
No, it can't be solved in a couple of hours. But the building blocks can go in.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's really been a pleasure talking to you, Tim. Thank you so much. Lots of really good insights and some practical tips for people going forward. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you.